You've really got to be aware of, what you can change and what you can't change, and focus on the things that you can't change and the things that you have got no influence or control over. You can't let that be the thing that brings you down. You really can't. You've just got to, keep at it. So,
welcome to the People in Legal podcast. This is the Law and Beyond show, and I'm your host, Chantal McNaught, PhD researcher researching how lawyers navigate the conflicts between law as a profession and law as a business. And here on the Law and Beyond show, we're exploring everything there is in the expanding legal universe. That is law, technology, compliance and education, and academia. And today's guest is Jo Cope, the CEO and Managing Director of Providior, where she is steering the company's growth and shaping its future. With over 25 years in financial services and legal funding, Jo knows the ins and outs of helping professional firms access the capital they need to thrive. And since stepping into the CEO role in 2022, Jo has been driving Providior's mission to deliver smart, tailored funding solutions for law firms and beyond. Jo's career spans senior leadership roles, founding her own business, and building expertise in everything from risk management to strategic planning. She's passionate about creating a culture of integrity, innovation, and client service. We were just talking about the people. And today, Jo's here to share her insights on leadership, growth, and the challenges for disbursement funding. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jo.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So Providior does disbursement funding. And so my understanding is that you do have a lot of experience when it comes to personal injury law and that kind of thing. So what do you see firsthand when realising that funding is an important issue?
So we've been, just a tiny bit of background, just so I suppose you can understand where we get our knowledge from. So we've been in business since 2013, and we fund 60 plus law firms around Australia, and primarily that disbursement funding. So we do see firsthand with a lot of firms the challenges that come with having enough capital to be able to pay the disbursements on their legal matters. So you know as well as I do, those personal injury law matters, they can take anywhere, maybe on average 2.5, 3 years to complete and to get a settlement for the claimant. So, and it's a no-win, no-fee basis, so the law firm's not getting their revenue until the matter settles. And if they're paying the disbursements on those matters themselves, they have to cover that outlay for 2 or 3 years. So if you were thinking on average the disbursements for one legal matter might be $5,000, if a law firm's running, say, 100 matters, they would have to have $500,000 worth of their funds locked up for 2 or 3 years. So that is significant. And
yes,
the option's always there for the claimant to pay their own disbursements, but by and large, I think the law firms find that their claimants are not in the position to be able to pay those disbursements themselves. If they're injured and not working, and they just don't have the access to that sort of money, if the claimant can't pay it and the law firm is unable to cover the cost of those disbursements, then that's when the law firm would typically look for funding outside, which is where Providior comes into the picture.
Yeah, it's very much the unfortunate reality of our legal system, in the sense that justice is accessible for those that can afford it. And I think it's a really good thing to know that there are organisations like Providior that can provide this, bridging, not only supporting the claimants and in the first place who might not be able to access those funds to then get the sorts of claims that they're entitled to in the course of justice, but also support the law firms, because I don't think there's very many that have that kind of cash just sitting around.
Yeah, absolutely. And some different firms take different approaches to funding their disbursements, and that's totally understandable. And I think you find it at different stages of law firms too. So we have funded a number of senior people who have left larger personal injury law firms to start up their own firm, and that's challenging enough for them to stop drawing a wage and to be going potentially 18 months, 2 years before they have the ability to draw a wage. So we funded a lot of those startup firms, which has been really rewarding for us actually, because we've had a front row seat watching their growth and development and their firms blossom, and it's really lovely to have been a part of that. And then we've also got the mid-sized firms who they may have been self-funding their disbursements and then get to a stage where it becomes too challenging, or they might like to free up that cash flow to invest in growth, which is where we love to step in and help as well.
Yeah, and it seems like, because obviously everything has increased as far as the cost of living, is it the same when it comes to these disbursement outlays for these claims?
Yeah, it sure has actually, and we've probably I don't have the statistics front of mine, but I would say on average at that, for instance, the medico-legal reports, they've probably increased from, say, 3,500 to $7,500 on average over the last 6 or 7 years. So quite a significant increase. So, and of course, all the ancillary costs like court filing fees have also increased as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have like any sort of examples of seeing where the funding can make a real difference when it comes to like the claimant, but also the law firm? Is there anything that you could share? Obviously, the details will be changed to ensure confidentiality, but I think the important thing is like, what difference does this make for some of the people that you're seeing and working with?
Yeah, and we do see that on a day-to-day basis, that there can be challenges with the matters that the law firm's running, whether it's the type of matter or the complexity of the matter. So we funded a claim. It was a medico-legal matter that a law was running for a claimant, and that probably took between 3 and 4 years to finalise. And because of the complexity, the disbursements actually were north of $40,000, which is significant. So there was a lot of different expert reports that were required for the law firm to get an outcome for their claimant, and that is that is definitely outside the norm and way above what Providior would normally fund on a per matter basis. But the relationship that you have with the firm that you're funding, and you have that relationship so the law firm's able to let you know the challenges that they're having with the matter. We're able to get enough confidence and certainty that that matter is progressing to settlement. And in this case, the law firm didn't have the ability to fund it themselves. So, yes, we looked at it and were able to continue funding, as I say, north of $40,000 on disbursements for over 4 years. And the matter did settle successfully, and everyone was repaid. So, and the claimant got the justice that they should have got.
Yeah, wow. Providior is one of the first, like it was this whole disbursement funding area and for this access to justice was still really in its infancy when Providior was first founded or started in 2013. What have you seen in how the industry has evolved since then, and what sort of challenges are being faced by funders that banks obviously won't touch?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you're right. Providior was one of the earlier disbursement funders in Australia, and I understand that back at that time, the founders and directors, one of the biggest challenges of that they faced was actually that education process for the market, letting them know what disbursement funding is, how it works, how it operates, and for law firms to be able to see the benefit and the opportunity for using a disbursement funder. So now it's not so much about the education piece, because most law firms are aware of disbursement funding and understand how it operates. And there's quite a few disbursement funders in the market today, which is great. We like to always be collaborative and work with, they are our competitors, but and again, it's about the people and the relationships. And if you've got relationships with other providers, if it's a facility or funding that doesn't fit your remit or mandate, then if you know of other funders that you can suggest that they might talk to, that's a win-win for the industry, for the law firm, for the claimants, for everyone. So we do take a pretty collaborative approach with our other funders in the market, which is wonderful.
That is really wonderful, and I think that is something that is a little bit underrated in how that collaboration isn't necessarily the antithesis of commercial competition. That sometimes in order to have good competition, you do have to collaborate, and that's really important in areas that are significant for society. Justice needs to be seen, it needs to be delivered, and a big part of that is with the settling of personal injury claims, and when accidents and people at fault are like to I'm trying to remember back when I did torts law, when you are meant to be returned to where you were, but
Yes.
for the event that's occurred, and in order to access that, they need those sorts of providers. I'm curious as to like how the whole risk management thing works when it comes to lending without property security, because obviously, like, to me that sounds like quite risky. Like, are you able to provide a little bit more on the background of how that sausage gets made, so to speak?
And this is the challenge for law firms. So accessing finance for disbursement funding. So typically the banks don't like to lend in this space, and that's generally because of the average days that those loans would be out for, and of course that's the length of the legal matter. So that's where firms like Providior can step in. And you're right, we don't take property security when we're looking at working with a firm. We obviously, as a funder, do our due diligence, and do some underwriting and assessment and those sorts of technical pieces. But most importantly, one of the most important things for us is the caliber of the law firm and the reputation of the law firm, because you need that law firm to be taking on matters that they have a high degree, a high rate of success for settling. So if a law firm's running a legal matter and it's not successful, then typically the claimant doesn't pay anything, the whole no win, no fee um, concept. Then, as you mentioned before, we do lend without property security, so it's essentially unsecured, albeit we do have the protection under the different legal legislations that disbursements are repaid from settlement funds when they arrive in the solicitor's trust account. So I think one of the risks for us is that we fund business growth. So we are deliberately paying those disbursements to free up the law firm's cash flow so they can invest in talent, in marketing, in business operations, to support their growth plans. So where we sometimes face challenges is with rapid growth. So a law firm might invest heavily in marketing, take on a lot of new matters, and then maybe not have the systems and the people in place to actually process those legal matters. So what we find then is that I think you mentioned it before about the sausage, they get this really big, big chunk of matters that just aren't progressing as they should. And the timeframes spill out, push out, and that does become challenging from a funder's perspective, having to fund those matters for much longer than anticipated.
It really is something that part of that grey area where it's practice management in the sense of business operating systems. And in the literature from my research, there's a lot of that tension between what are the things that lawyers do compared to what good business is when it comes to those sorts of things, and how do you ameliorate the fact that there is a kind of this tension of needing to be what they've identified as a good lawyer, but might not be a good business. And so from what the sounds of things are, that you're looking out for those firms that have the right people in place that can help with those systems, so then you can help more people get their claims settled.
Yeah, absolutely. That structure and that being aware of just the metrics of running a good business, understanding what your average days are, understanding your WIP. When matters settle, are you having to write off a lot of WIP, or have you under WIP the file? So have you worked it appropriately? What's your gross profit margin? All of those sorts of metrics that, from a funder's perspective and a finance perspective, are second nature for us and critical for us, but they're not always front of mind for law firms, or it's not always something that they understand straight up. And particularly too for those, and this is across the board, I was going to say particularly for those newer law firms that are still finding their feet and managing their growth while they get their head around everything to do with running a business, as well as continuing to be a good lawyer and run good matters and help claimants. All of those things have to come together in the right way. And I think it's always really good when you've got a law firm or principals or solicitors who acknowledge what they're really good at, and usually that is helping people and being an exceptional lawyer. But then if they can also recognise where their gaps are or where they need extra assistance, whether that's in terms of a good accountant who understands personal injuries matters or legal matters, so they might see that they've got a need for a finance manager or a practice manager who can really assist them with keeping the business running well, which ultimately helps the people that they're doing the legal matters for.
Right. That really segues, I think, to the next question I want to ask, which is, I'm sure, and I've heard this, a lot of people over the last couple of years have had some challenges. The 2020s are, it's an interesting decade.
Yeah,
And have there been some challenges for you? And what are the sorts of things have you learnt over the last couple of years about leadership and yourself the last few years?
absolutely. And I think we're not immune to it. So COVID really caused some big problems for a lot of people, for a lot of industries, and particularly for the legal industry and for personal injuries law firms. There was the closing down of courts for a period of time. It was the inability to have face-to-face conversations with their claimants. So there were lots and lots of reasons of the defendant insurers, a lot of people working from home and learning to work from home and to manage that change in technology. So we found there was a big impact on the length of time that matters were taking to conclude. And that put a lot of pressure on us in terms of financing those legal matters for longer than what we would normally do. And it's okay when it's just a small cohort. You can sort of manage that in the context of all of the lending that you're doing. But when it's across the board, it certainly, can have a big impact. And yes, we certainly did face quite a lot of challenges over the last couple of years, where, again, it comes back to the people, great management team, great board, lots of people working together to navigate and manage those challenges. And you just have to be persistent, and you've got to be tenacious, and you've still got to focus on what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you're going to get to. Sometimes it's really hard to get your head above the weeds and see the silver linings and to keep it and to keep that belief that you will navigate these challenges. And we have, and we've come out, we're through those challenges, and we're, as you said at the start, when we're navigating our growth plans, and it's really, really rewarding to see when people come together what they can achieve.
Wow. And I think there's a lot in that sort of resilience piece to be, very mindful about. It's okay, like it's temporary. It kind of reminds me of that whole Winston Churchill quote about if you're going through hell, keep going, because it's like everything kind of has a deadline, really, and even hard times do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that serenity prayer, and it rings true in so many things. You've really got to be aware of, what you can change and what you can't change, and focus on the things that you can't change and the things that you have got no influence or control over. You can't let that be the thing that brings you down. You really can't. You've just got to, keep at it. So, and I do blame my mother, because she drummed into us, me and my sisters, when we were kids, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So you just...
Good advice.
Yeah, thanks, Mum. Yeah, there's no giving up. You just get in there, knuckle down and do what needs to be done.
And do it well. I think that's important. There's been a lot when it comes to have you heard the 2024 word of the year was coined by an Australian researcher about how, social media and technology has gone through this process of enshittification.
Yeah.
And that I think is very much the opposite of the sort of value that you just talked about, that your mother was very wise to impose upon you and your siblings, about doing something well and looking ahead, I think, and doing things well, and with the whole silver linings, the hope side of things. Like I want to ask, like, what are you most looking forward to about the future of not just the disbursement funding area in legal, but also technology, especially with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
How are you preparing for that?
Yeah, so internally we are really embracing the advancements in technology, AI, all of those sorts of things. So and we've recently taken on some new staff members who have got a lot of experience in this space, and we're already starting to see some results from that, and we're just harnessing their capabilities and the technology. So it's great from our perspective, because it's improving processes and procedures and speed just the basic stuff like, reducing the manual aspect of some of the things that we do. And it allows us to focus on the big picture and the strategy and the growth. But it's also feeding directly into the service that we provide to our law firms. So we're streamlining, simplifying. We always listen. So we love our clients and we talk to them all the time. But we listen to what the challenges are that they have in the context of disbursement funding, and we try and find solutions to make their lives easier, because if their lives are easier, they're able to focus on doing the things that they need to do, which is running legal matters and running a law firm. So their success is definitely our success.
Yeah, and there's some real life, use cases in there. Of course, to be a bit meta, there is, allowing Copilot to help with the preparation of this conversation, and help with the focus of what questions are we going to explore together, and what information you have to share, which I thought was an incredible use case that you had, Jo. And do you think, though, from the Providior aspect of it, that it can enhance things like your data analysis and how you're able to have those sorts of conversations as you support your law firm customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits of being in business for so long. We have so much data and so much information. So we're working at the moment to do some benchmarking that we'll be able to share with our law firms around the disbursement funding side of legal matters, and how it reflects the different stages of the matters and how long those different stages take, what the averages are in terms of a medico-legal expense, by overall what the average disbursements are for a legal matter, by file, jurisdiction, state, all of those sorts of things. And it'll be, we're really looking forward to sharing that with our law firms so that they can get some benefit from our experience and data and knowledge as well.
What a fantastic use case when it comes to AI. So it's not all bad. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
No, although it's probably, I think in some ways, easier for us to access and use technology and AI. I wouldn't want to be one of our clients, one of our law firms, and being worried about whether they're quoting an incorrect case or something like that. We just keep seeing that in the media all the time.
Yeah, but that's the thing about media is that those sorts of cases, those sorts of headlines do get the clicks. But as we explore in other conversations here on the Law and Beyond show, that there are definitely areas where it is useful, where the risks can be managed.
Yes, exactly. And see, that's right. That's in your field as well.
Yeah. A little bit, just a little bit, a bit of an interest. Now, before we wrap up, we do something here on the Law and Beyond show, which is
you're making me nervous.
No, nothing to be nervous about, because this is just a conversation, and these are conversation cards, and they're just random topics that, like a specific question that is usually. Most of the time, in fact, 100% of the time, I've done 15 of these interviews as we were talking about. This is the Sweet 16, and they're honestly really delightful. So Jo,
before you hit me with this, do I get to phone a friend?
I'm not sure if you'll need to, because this is something that's just about you.
Okay.
When it comes to food, what is your weakness?
Okay, so this will be interesting, and probably if my children watch this, they will cringe. So
Perfect. I'll make sure we distribute it to your children.
So a little bit like the death row meal.
Yes. Yeah. What's your weakness? Yeah. So food-wise.
So I'm going to link my weakness with my death row meal. My absolute favourite would have to be rissoles and vegetables. So that's what I want. So I've got friends who are real foodies who, research restaurants, look at the menus before we go out. And I am so happy just to have, I always love going out for a good meal, but if I had to choose, a very basic meal. So
that's so beautifully home, like it kind of gives the visions of like that warmth. But I really want to ask, is it with or without gravy?
I do. I would go with gravy. So with
Good
gravy.
choice. Excellent choice. Oh, well, I know how to bribe you now.
And I would just like to say we went to a very, very nice restaurant in Hobart, and what did they have on the menu? Some very fancy rissoles and vegetables. So I was a happy girl.
That is honestly delightful. This has been the Law and Beyond show on the People in Legal podcast. If you haven't already, give us a follow on your chosen platform that you're listening to this. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and make sure you turn on notifications. We will see you next Friday.